My name is David. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hesai Technologies. So I'm going to share my stories about how to move from Silicon Valley to China. 2 years ago, I decided to move my company from Silicon Valley to China after studying and working in the United States for about 8 years. So when I arrived at Shanghai airport, I wanted to buy some food with my credit card. But I was told, sorry, China doesn't have a credit card system ready yet. So I was extremely surprised and frustrated by how far behind China is. So I asked my friends a simple question. When will China ever get credit cards? And his answer was more surprising. He said, probably never. I said, what do you mean never? He said, because we have something better. It's called scan payment system. So it's the idea that you can pay anybody just by scanning your phone. And it takes less than a second. It's very secure, and there's no fee. So even though credit cards were considered the symbol of Western civilization, it turns out China didn't need it. We completely reinvented this new system. And then we skipped the credit card as a whole. We took it to the next level. So that got me into thinking about something else. All of a sudden I realized of all these times, we stick to this idea of trying to calculate how many years China is behind the world. But all of a sudden, this question itself is no longer valid. China is no longer chasing, mimicking, copying the world. We're creating a new one. And there are 3 elements crucial to this creation of the new world. It's the market, it's the money, and there's the talent. So I'm going to try to explain each one of these and what's happening in China. I know German people love numbers, so I brought a lot of numbers with me. So first, the market. Yes, we have 1.3 billion people, 1.3 billion consumers. But more importantly, it's the fast-growing purchasing power that has made the Chinese market so massive and so attractive. So I'm going to be talking about a few industries. Let's start with smartphone users. Smartphone user counts is probably the single most important indicator of the mobile internet industry. So I'm sorry, the darker one is China. It's supposed to be red. It's not as red as I thought. So back in 2009, when we all started, everyone was small. But by 2015, all the 3 regions, China, Europe, US, have reached about half of their each populations. But what's mentioning here is that China has only a quarter of GDP per capita compared to those 2 regions. That means the Chinese consumers are much, much more willing to invest their hard-earned money into the next generation of technologies. And this is great for technology innovators. Second, of course, I have to talk about cars. About 10 years ago, owning a car in China is considered a luxury. But for the past decade, you can see Europe and the USA, they plateaued auto consumption. But in China, this is really just the beginning for us. Because not only 1, but 2 cars are considered a standard in top-tier cities in China. And this drives enormous amount of growth in auto consumption. And in China, owning a German car is considered a well-accepted symbol of premium lifestyle. And believe me, we're not going for the cheap models. E-commerce. All right, this is Alibaba. It's too dark. E-commerce is another sensational phenomenon in China. Last year, the leading online retailer, Alibaba, on one day, the Singles Day, it's like the Christmas sale for China, recorded about 14 billion US dollars in sales. Just to give you some idea, I did my math. This is more than 7 months of all the retails in Berlin combined. Well, with all this huge market, there's concept, no one's surprised that money, oh my God, this thing guys, okay, money, well you see the size of the slice. Money went into China. So the blue one is the United States, the bottom, the lighter blue is Europe, and the red one is China. So if you look at the total VC investment in Chinese companies as a percentage of the global pie, China went from there at 6% to 27% just in 2 years. And if you think this number is huge, think again. This is how much more money the Chinese government have put into helping those startups. And this is much more money even than the VC had. So you have a huge market in China and tons of money flowing into startups. It comes natural that we have a lot of talent. This is the number for Chinese college graduates. Over the past 7 to 8 years, from 1% to 3% of the new graduates decided to start their own business. Last year alone, about 250,000 people decided to be their own boss. And this is also true for people who went abroad to study and returned. These are the numbers for the past 8 years. Over time, more and more people go abroad to study the modern technology from Western world, and then they return back to China. The percentage is going up, and more than 50% of them decide to start their own business or join a startup. If you think people stay in foreign country, Chinese people stay in foreign country because they couldn't find a job, now this is totally wrong. They have made careful comparisons. They decided to leave foreign country to come back to China only because this is the best place for them to start their career. This is also true for us. About 3 years ago, 2 of my partners from Stanford University, we invented this technology of using laser to measure gas and to measure distance. It's a new type of optical sensors. We're from Stanford, Tsinghua, and Apple, and we work in the Silicon Valley. The very beginning, we were part-time working on that, and eventually, the idea became so big that we decided to work on that full-time. And in 2014, we relocated back to China for the reason I just stated. By now, we finished multiple rounds of funding and have about 25 employees. And I don't know if it's important, we're profitable. These are the products we've been making. So because we make those high-grade optical sensors, and there are mainly 2 applications. First is the energy sector. We put those laser sensors onto drones, and those drones will circle around facilities, factories, natural gas pipelines, and find out if there's any leak. And we also put our laser sensors onto autonomous cars and also try to help driver assistance systems to figure out what's around us. We developed different applications using our laser technologies, and we decided to focus on the Chinese market. So for the 2 years, our company has been in a very unique position in the sense that our technologies were invented in Silicon Valley. Our founders were educated in the United States, but we decided to focus on the Chinese market. That means that we have to adapt to local business rules, and we have to work with Chinese clients. And the rules, sometimes they could be implicit, and sometimes they're counterintuitive. So to be perfectly honest, the journey has not been without difficulties. And yes, we've made mistakes. We learn our lessons along the bumpy road. So today, I wanted to share a few examples of the mistakes we made, or we almost have made, and how we turned them around, just to give you some ideas about what it's like to run a business in China. First, I know you're going to ask, so I put it at the first one. think China is about cloning? Can we do a raise of hands who think that might be true? Ooh. I don't maybe. Okay. Look, yes, there are successful clones of good ideas from abroad. But if you still believe you can just take anything and take it to China and make it happen to build a great company, that's not gonna fly. You know why? Because there's simply too many copies of any good or bad ideas. So now, anything that's copyable has been copied. But if you also think copying anything to China is like you want to copy at your computer, Control-C and Control-V, I want to tell you there's much, much more to it. Think about it. Why are those Chinese companies more successful than the models they learned from? It's their unique understanding about the Chinese market combined their ability to innovate upon the original form of this idea. So today I want to give you a few examples of the truly innovative companies, startup companies in China. This is an instant messaging company, car service company, and a drone company. First, WeChat. How many of you have WeChat? Wow, you should get it too. WeChat is everywhere. WeChat is, in my opinion, the mobile app in our time, at least in China. WeChat is probably the only reason people use cell phone for some of the people. And WeChat does everything for you. It's much, much more than a WhatsApp. WeChat have about 570 million daily active users. More than 50% of them open more than 10 times a day. Basically, you live and die on WeChat. And it has attached more than 200 million credit cards. So WeChat is your super WhatsApp, plus all your wallets with credit cards, plus everything you do on Facebook in one app. So if you think this is a copy, I would not agree. Second, Didi. Okay, everyone asks, Didi is like an Uber in China, right? No. Didi does a lot of car services in terms of types and numbers than Uber has. Uber has its branches in China, it just didn't fly. Give you some numbers. Last year, Didi provides 1.4 billion rides. That's more than twice of total rides provided in the United States. And in Beijing, Didi has 7 times more rides than everything in New York City combined. That's how big Didi is. And what's more ironic is that the California company Apple decided to investing in a foreign company called Didi as opposed to its fellow company in California called Uber. And that does say something about Uber and Didi. The last one is one of the kind company. It's called DJI. It's actually our collaborator. But DJI is quite unique. It's the biggest player in the commercial drone field. It has more than 1 billion sales. And what I admire most about DJI is that they didn't just make a living by making money from Chinese people. Look at these numbers. They have more than 65% of sales from overseas. This is a product everyone in the world likes. Okay, number 2, marrying the government. So, as famous Chinese tycoon Jack Ma once said that you want to be in love with the government, but you don't want to marry them. Doing business with the Chinese government could be very lucrative, but sometimes it's risky. Let me tell you a story of mine. So, when we first returned to China, we found that there was a huge demand in monitoring the air quality because of the pollution problem. So we developed our device specifically for this purpose, for the government. But I was further involved in this process. I realized that, in general, it's really bad for a business to have a concentrated client base, especially if it's a government. So in the lengthy and slow process, as a technology provider, you run a risk of losing your independence and the credibility, because you can't really do everything the government asks you to do, and you have such low bargaining power. So one day, me and my partners, we decided to pull the plug. We said, that's enough. We're going to have to pivot to a new product in which we can only focus on the product without having to worry about the relationship. So today, the status of my business, we have less than 10% sales directly from the government. And ironically, we are in love with our government more than ever. Third, picking the wrong arena. When I say picking the arena, I mean the ability for a business to truly identify your strengths and your competitive edge and use that to make money. Picking the right arena can be quite difficult just in general, but it's actually hard in China because sometimes what you see is not what it is. And it takes a long time for you to really figure out what goes into a decision of a purchase. Another story of mine. At the very early stage of our business, we wanted to develop this safety alarm for coal mine. So it's a laser device. If there's a danger of explosion, this alarm will go off. It will save lives. Great product. Our product has the best performance, and we targeted at a third of what our competitors' price. So we thought it would be a home run. It's like the textbook of the best service and product. But we ran into a wall. 6 months later, didn't get anything. So I really sat down with my customers. After a round of drinks, I asked them, so can you just tell me why we're in such a shitty situation? So my customer said, well, to be honest, you need to know what we want. All right. So I said, okay, just tell me what you want, right? If it's some money, we'll consider, or maybe not. But he said, no, we want not to have to buy new product because we don't care about the performance and we don't care about the price. The only thing we care is that we can do as little as possible. Dead. So now I realize that as a technology company, you enter the wrong arena. You pick the war that you can never win. And nothing else matters whatsoever. The first one, the fine print. When I say the fine print, I mean like when you see in an ad, you see like a buy one, get one free, right? It's only later you found out that it's when you buy a TV set, you get a free remote. So, over-promising and too good to be true deals with a lot of fine prints are common in China, and they could be very deceptive. One of the examples will be, there will be some competition that people will tell you, if you enter, if you win, you get $1 million or €1 million. But later you find out that you have a million more conditions you have to meet before you can get money at all. The fine print are hidden, are deceptive, and if you don't read them carefully, you end up spending a lot of time and energy with nothing in return. So our company spent a lot of time trying to get those so-called free money, and in the end we realized that no, that's not the way you run a successful business. It's only because you're miserable that you try to earn those little money. So we just gave up. Last one. So now you've truly picked an innovative idea. You find the right arena that you're best at. You manage to avoid all the fine print traps that will eat you, and then you also develop a great relationship with the government without having to marry them. So you think this is a happy ending, but no. There's one more thing on for you. It's called the BAT curse. BAT stands for Baidu, the search engine company, Alibaba, the e-commerce company, and Tencent, the social network company. So they are the 3 most influential internet companies in China. In United States, if a small company grows big, grows into a real threat for big companies, usually the big companies will try to buy you out. They want to make peace with you, right? In China, they go to war with you. They will do everything. They're ruthless. They will try to destroy you because they don't want to pay the premium just to acquire you. Even if it's paying 3 times of salaries to steal all your employees, or they keep the price artificial low to drive you out of business, or they're just so powerful they can work with the policymakers to guarantee their monopoly. So if you don't watch for that, then see this coming, this could be the end. I observe another interesting phenomenon that, in the United States, we have this, I'm sure you have it too, the term called a serial entrepreneur, right? People start a business, sell that, and go to the next one. In China, I don't know if I know too many serial entrepreneurs. Because in China, if you work really hard on something, then you become good at it, you realize it's mostly luck, and it is too hard. You really don't want to go into new ideas. I know it's very unfortunate, but that's true. Because that's not a victory you can easily repeat. For them, it's more like a nightmare they don't want to relive. So that's why having a real good business in China means you sometimes will have to stay with it for the rest of your life. Of course, I'm hoping it will change. I'm hoping I can be a serial entrepreneur, but that's the real world. So now I've been completely honest with you about all the good and bad things about running a business in China. So I'll leave to you to draw your own conclusions. This is one of the greatest philosophers in China, Vinicius. He said it takes 3 things: the right time, the right place, and the right talent. For me, I think if you ever think about running business in China, this is the time. So I'll leave you with 2 questions. If not now, then. If not us, then who? Thank you.
Stick around because there will probably be some questions.
Oh, really?
From the
Okay,
audience.
sure. I don't have a script for that.
You cannot. That's the exciting part.
Okay, these are my contacts. If you don't have WeChat, get one. If you don't have emails, I don't know what to do.
So, any questions for
It's
them?
so good that there are questions.
Too good, too good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Maximilian, my question is how Chinese companies survive with the mistake number 5, with the bad course.
Very good. You team up with them at a very early stage. That's one of the strategies people use. Because if, let's say Tencent has probably like 1 billion users already. If you're an internet company and if you target Tencent as your enemy, that's not going to work. You have to, basically, the basic logic is people wanted to find what the big companies can do or just didn't want to do in the beginning. And that's the spot they can survive. And then if you grow, you involve them in an early stage. And then they become your friend, your stakeholder. And that way you can survive. But if you truly want to just to beat one of them, it's like now you want to go up against Google, that's really hard. And that's not the right way to do it. People don't do that.
Okay, to team up, it's they invest in you or they cooperate? Or?
Usually it's an investment or
Yeah.
some strategic relationship.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest way to survive. Martin.
Yeah, I got a problem talking about Tencent and WeChat again. We heard in the entrance talk from another Chinese, I don't know exactly who it was, but they mentioned that WeChat is planning on their own OS and going into having their own like Play Store basically.
Right.
So how would you see these kind of developments?
Okay, first, I have no hard evidence. I think what you said is rumor, right? If we're gonna be specific on this, I don't think so. Because if Tencent, well, first, Tencent is a group. WeChat is like a little startup Tencent hack. Right? But WeChat is so powerful that it's almost like an own giant company. I don't think that's a strategy to go. If you want a better launch, I will do that. Because if you are WeChat, you are appealing to more than 1 billion people. But if you have your own OS, most people won't go for it. Then you automatically lose them as your customers. That's one of the strategies Tencent and WeChat has, is that they wanted to be friends with basically anybody. So I think having their own OS will be totally wrong way to go. And I don't even know where you heard that before, but I don't think so.
I think the strategy is to start with your own app store first. That you basically can get apps
it has App Store,
yeah,
but that's within this Tencent WeChat system.
Right.
It's like an app within WeChat. You can do that now. Like you can do basic, say, credit card service, or you can buy stuff just from WeChat as an app, and there's an app within WeChat to do that. You can do that. Yeah. What's my opinion on that? It's good.
No. My question was like, what happens if that develops further into an OS and?
I think a fair question would be, what happens when WeChat is running its own platform of apps, right? What does that mean for other app builders? You go under their wings. That's your only option. That's what I said. You don't go against WeChat, right? It's just not something you want to do. And WeChat is careful and nice enough to have planning for you already. When it does it, it has a plan for you as an individual developer where you're going to be in 2 years or in 5 years. WeChat is actually really good at keeping this developer population. Are there any questions? So
one question. When you decided to go to China, mainland China,
yes,
your company, what was the status of your company then?
Very early stage. Very early stage. So we were just 3 founders and working on the prototype for a year by the time we wanted to go back to China. But we've been planning that all along. So it's been somewhat an easy decision. All the triggering point is that we agreed that if we raise enough money, we're going to just go back to China. Because if we don't have enough money in the bank, we felt like we're so vulnerable that we will not survive in China. But after we raised enough money, we decided, oh, that's good, let's go.
And then maybe an additional question. So of course, you have a lot of knowledge about China, probably. So you speak Chinese.
Oh, that part, yeah, sure.
Yeah, you speak Chinese, probably you have family there or something. You have some.
That's quite obvious.
Somewhat of a connection there.
Sure.
If you would consider yourself, let's say, a German startup, with kind of a business idea that, for example, could be working in China.
Sure.
What would you think would be then the best spot for a German startup to do some startup business?
Interesting. Good question. I think my answer will go back to what Martin told me, that you need to find your local partner. You can't just be a foreign company and say we're going to dominate this country, period, right? That's not going to happen. You want to acknowledge local culture. You want that. He once famously said that foreign people can't do sales, right? I mean, I didn't know that, but thank you for telling me. Right. So I think that's the right strategy. That you want to acknowledge the difference and you want to find your local partners. And then Germany is a strong brand in China, especially in engineering. So I think if you go to China and if you play this card very well, it could do a lot of good things for you. But again, that's not going to be the end. That's going to not be all. You still have to form this company in a way that you're going to take advantage from both the great brand Germany has, combined with a great local sales force and local partner. I think that would be the perfect business. Final question?
You showed us 2 very interesting questions. If not now, when? If not us, then who? I have the third question related to that. If it's now and it's us, then where in China? China's first.
Great question.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming not too many people are that familiar with China, so I'll just be very brief on this. There are 3 major places, top-tier cities. It's probably Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. So Beijing is the capital for startups. Like it's really they have like startup cafes and they have those parks and it's everywhere and it's very convenient and it's the capital. And it's like all the resources mostly are concentrated in Beijing. So if you don't know where to go, going to Beijing will be a very safe choice. And Shenzhen has its uniqueness in the sense that Shenzhen is a manufacturing place for China. Like if you look anything you have, your cell phone, your camera, everything, it's in Shenzhen. And Shenzhen has this so huge community that you get everything done within 20 minutes of drive. Like for any part you look for, you find it in Shenzhen. That's why once, I think Steve Jobs once said that Apple has made its success thanks to the great supply chains in Shenzhen and also Dongguan, because they can easily find anything and they can make changes in like a cycle of like a week. If you are a company from Beijing, that's going to slow you down dramatically. And lastly, Shanghai, where I run my company. Shanghai is probably the most international city in China. It's very foreigner friendly. It's actually the capital for the finance. So it's not probably so great for, especially hardcore tech startups, which we happen to be one. But there's great talent and the Yangtze River Delta, it's a great area where you find a lot of small cities with great companies and suppliers that you can work with. So I think it's hard to say which one is the best. Of course, it's not as simple, but I would recommend those three places.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you.